ways. 2016 was an election about Hillary Clinton and half the country not liking Hillary Clinton or not wanting a woman or whatever the reasons. And 2020 was about Trump, people being frustrated with the Trump years and wanting a change. I don't think it was necessarily about we love Joe Biden. It was about a repudiation of Trump. So I do think like the changes between 2020 and 2016, there's a lot of gender in that too, especially among the white working class men and suburban women who still voted for Trump in 2020.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. Who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States.
I'd like to talk about, specifically in your book, it's about Trump, in the sense that at a certain point in the book, there is a part that it's like specifically at page 85, what you actually say that in that moment, like in the moment where Hillary was talking about the private email issue and everything that concerned that issue, in that moment, Trump understood that he would win. Why did you remark that? Why did you write that? Why do you say that in that moment he realized that he could win?
Yeah, I believe that was based on reporting with some of his closest advisors, telling me that that was the moment when he knew that he could beat her. I mean, I think there's there's kind of Trump the candidate and Trump the president, but there's no question that when he was running for office, he was very adept at identifying his opponent's weaknesses and amplifying them. So I think he already wanted to have this narrative of Hillary Clinton as corrupt, as sneaky, this sort of reputation that the right-wing media has used against the Clintons for many years, since the White House, since the 1992 campaign. And so I think when the private email server happened, Trump identified that as a string he could just pull and pull and pull and kind of add to this perception that Hillary couldn't be trusted, that there was something sneaky about her. But that was certainly something that his campaign was saying, that was a moment when he knew that she could be beaten.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Also because I think that this book is really actual, and that's the reason why we talked about it, because you really explore Hillary's personality. I personally didn't knew many things that I've discovered by reading this book, and it's interesting the fact that you picture Hillary in a way that I think it's quite different from how like many journalists picture her, because you pointed out the good things that she had, but you also pointed out maybe the things that weren't seen so clearly by the public. And one of these things is that Hillary didn't actually portray the everyday American. And this maybe was one of the reasons why in the end she didn't succeed. It's interesting, like, why do you think that she didn't succeed in this? And how do you think that Trump dealt with this? Because I don't think that Trump represents the everyday American. Like he favors the wealthy. So how comes this?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. One of the things is I think Hillary Clinton was really, really connected with working people when she was running for Senate in New York, and when she was a senator, because she was constantly in touch with people who live in, if you're familiar with upstate New York, there's a lot of farmers, a lot of factory towns, outside New York City, it's very rural. And she was a very involved senator. So when she was a senator, even when she ran in 2008, which I also covered her 2008 campaign, she was very connected to people because she was a senator, always having that interaction. Then she was Secretary of State for 4 years. So you're in a totally different world. You're traveling on your private plane with your advisors. You're going to foreign countries. And then she went to Chappaqua, which is a wealthy New York suburb where she lives. And I think that when she ran in 2016, she was sort of out of practice, I think, on the campaign trail and connecting to working people. There seemed to be somewhat of a disconnect, that she seemed almost like royalty, and people were, were not feeling that connection. That's not to say all people. There were a lot, especially Black voters of color, felt a strong connection to her, and especially women of a certain age. But I think with Donald Trump, the complicated thing about Donald Trump is that he sort of represents the wealthy guy that you would be if you won the lottery. It's all sort of like exaggerated and gold, and he's eating like McDonald's on his plane, and like, of course, even though his policies favor the wealthy, and he has only by most measures only benefited, the ruling class. I think there was something that came from his popularity on reality TV, which was like that show, and the Apprentice was so popular, people forget how much impact that had. And then I also just think that it's sort of the same reason we're drawn to the Kardashians. It's sort of this idealized version of what working people would want to be if we won the lottery. I don't know. To me, there's something about his
Okay,
wealth
so
that was like Mitt
it's a
Romney's
kind of
wealth
me.
was like, people couldn't relate to Mitt Romney's wealth because he had been a banker and a Ivy League educated, and even though, and Trump, there was something like crass and like almost, I don't know, I think untraditional about him, that people thought like, oh, he's like me. I mean, I can't really explain it better than that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like you mentioned the black vote, and that's also interesting because actually Hillary that time got really high votes, especially from the Latino community. But it's interesting seeing how in 2020, like in the campaign between Trump and Biden, Trump actually got a lot of votes from the Latino community, especially in Florida. And that's interesting. Like, how comes like like years before, like it wasn't like this, and then suddenly he got a lot of votes. Like in the end, he lost.
Yeah.
He got votes.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One is a lot of politicians and journalists say the Latino vote, but it's so different. You can't compare a Cuban, like in Florida, there's a lot of Cubans and Venezuelans who fled socialist countries, who have terrible, terrible, memories of what a socialist government did to their country. And so they're very different than a Mexican voter in Texas or Arizona. So I think it's hard. I think we have a hard time because we try to lump in Latinos, and they're so different with different motivations. That said, I think that Trump did well in Florida because they portray Democrats as a socialist party. I mean, this is ridiculous because Biden is like the least socialist, of all the time. But I think that messaging, like because they ran a lot of ads in Spanish calling the Democrats socialists, and I think that messaging was very effective to a certain type of Latino who has, memories of losing everything in a socialist government. So I think that they were very effective in that. And then I think with the Mexicans in Texas, which is where I'm from, so I understand this a little bit. Hillary Clinton has very, very deep roots there. She used to volunteer in South Texas for the McGovern campaign when she was like a law student. Like she and Bill Clinton are beloved by Mexican Americans in many places and in Texas. And so they have a long, deep history. And Biden, even though he has been around forever, he doesn't have that history, that connection with the community the way the Clintons had. And it's very confusing because Trump was so horrible to immigrants and that this had happened in 2020. But I think for a couple of reasons. One is Biden did not have that that loyalty, that long-term relationship that Hillary Clinton was very good at maintaining. And also, I think that we kind of have this idea that Latinos vote based on immigration, but it's actually not their most important issue. A lot of these people are third generation, Mexican Americans. They speak fluent English. They might not even speak Spanish. The causes are they're small business owners. The economy is very important. A lot of them are very conservative, so abortion rights would be very important. And so I think you are seeing a lot of in Mexican parts of the country voting based on those issues versus like loyalty to Democrats or loyalty to Biden.
And so, do you think that this is not concerning Hillary, but actually it's something interesting because like us, like from an international point of view, like here, like journalists and like all news media like say that Biden like won like extremely extraordinary votes. But actually, when you go and see the data, the actual data, I don't think that he won like this extraordinary match. Like, I don't think that he won like so much. Obviously, he won, but still, I think that the Trump voters, I mean, I think that they are a lot. Like, I don't think that he won like this extraordinarily victorious. Like, what do you think about it?
I think he did. I think he ended up winning significantly in the Electoral College, but as you know, we have a weird system where the Electoral College is not necessarily the number of people voting. And I think, the popular vote was a lot closer than, Democrats or people overseas could even imagine, I think, because of the state of the country right now, because of all of the groups of people that Trump has insulted. I think people had a hard time getting their head around that he won more votes than he did in more people voted for him in 2020 than in 2016. I mean, Biden still had a decisive electoral college victory, but you're right in that he wasn't defeated. It wasn't like a repudiation that America repudiated Trump. A good half of the country still chose Trump. And so that is something that the Republican Party and the Democrats and we all have to grapple with, going forward. This is not a movement that is going away when Trump is gone.
Do you think that Biden won mainly because of the pandemic, or do you think that he won for other reasons?
Yeah, I think there's no question that the health and economic disaster that we're all living through right now had a dramatic impact on Biden's victory. I mean, there's a famous saying in American politics is, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And I think that is a clear vote. If you're just voting based on that question, it's a clear vote for Biden, right? Like, not very many people in America are better off than we were 4 years ago. So I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, and the response and the economic catastrophe that has gone with it, and that coupled with, I think, like Congress being so divided that they couldn't even get together on a package to help people who are unemployed and losing their houses, and kind of all of this, I think had a major impact on Biden's victory. Not to mention the fact that there was a pandemic meant that Biden didn't really have to campaign, and like Biden, many people admire many things about him. He is prone to say things he doesn't mean. So I think like the less exposure actually, helped him a lot too. It was just kind of ride out the campaign, he's just not being Trump.
Yes, that's interesting because I've seen the debate, the last debate that they did, and it was interesting seeing like Biden like that didn't have the same attitude, and you could clearly see that Trump has this kind of, you've mentioned it before, this kind of like telegraphic way of like communicating, like really he is used to TV shows, so he knows how to talk to like normal people, and Biden does not. So that's interesting. Also, here I have some data, and it's interesting seeing like that the white working class that in 2016 like voted hugely for Trump. In 2020, like it's not enormous, but it increased towards the Democrats. And why do you think that this happened? Always for the pandemic or for another reason?
I mean, yes, Biden, if we're talking about loyalty, his family was from Scranton. He's always played up this like, I'm the everyday guy. And he does have deep roots, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin. Those places those union towns, like factory towns, they know Joe Biden. They know Joe Biden's for them. So I think there's some connection. I also think that we have to take into account sexism and feelings about Hillary Clinton. In many ways, 2016 was an election about Hillary Clinton and half the country not liking Hillary Clinton or not wanting a woman or whatever the reasons. And 2020 was about Trump, people being frustrated with the Trump years and wanting a change. I don't think it was necessarily about we love Joe Biden. It was about a repudiation of Trump. So I do think like the changes between 2020 and 2016, there's a lot of gender in that too, especially among the white working class men and suburban women who still voted for Trump in 2020.
No, in fact, this is something that you address in the book, and you address it very well. You describe very well the whole situation, and I want to trust to this because I know that it's something really, really bad that happened there, and the fact that like there was a lot of sexism, but we know it, like it's like in the world. I think it's not something just that happens in the USA. Like you can see like internationally speaking, how many women are in politics? Like I think that, I mean, like there aren't much women. So I understand the problem, but what do you think of Kamala Harris, being vice president? Do you think that it compensates in a certain way the loss of Hillary, or do you think it's just something that they did, like, I don't want to be mean, but like promotionally speaking, like, to address like also the native people, and to see like, here we have a woman, like she is not fully, like she is half, Indian. So do you think it's something like promotional that they did? Do you think that it's actually that it represents a victory for women? Like what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it was a huge victory, not just a woman, but a woman of color who's like young and vibrant and really can represent the future of the Democratic Party. I think it was the, best, kind of best period for the Biden campaign when they named her. I feel like it turned Biden, an old white man has been in politics forever. And then when you added Kamala, it was a really vibrant, exciting, I think inspiring to a lot of people, choice. And I think she really shined on the debate stage. And no, I don't know if it like compensates for the Hillary loss. But I think it shows that, that loss led to this, that something came out of that loss, first, whether it's all the women who have run and won for Congress or Kamala. But I guess you could go back to all of the women who came before. I don't know if you know Shirley Chisholm, Black woman who ran for president in the 70s, but like you could trace all of that, I think, to Kamala, ending up in the White House. And so that was a very inspiring thing for a lot of women. And I think people think she has a real future to become president.
Yeah, I think that too, and I hope that it will be true, because if we manage to have a USA president that is woman, we're going to be better off, I think, in the whole world, actually. So I hope that. And I have two more questions. The first one is, how do you think that America would have changed if, like, the following morning Hillary would have won? Like, what do you think that would have been the path?
I think there would have been, a huge amount of excitement having been at the Javits Center that night, and people were ready to elect the first woman. I think there would have been a huge amount of excitement, of history making, and then I think it would have been very difficult. I think the Republicans would have immediately opened up criminal investigations into her. They would have used all of their power to try to divide and destroy her presidency, and I think they would have. I think it would have been a huge distraction. Like, I think we would be talking about the email server for 4 years. I think Hillary Clinton would have, obviously appointed people to handle the pandemic, and she would have done, but I also think there would have been a lot of gridlock and division, given that half the country did not vote for her. And I think she is just and this is not necessarily fault of her own, it comes with 30 years of sexism. She's a divisive figure, and I think the Republicans and Fox News would have used all of their muscle to try to hurt her presidency. So I'd say really great short-lived victory, and then the hard work of ruling a divided country.
Yeah, it is divided, but I mean, I do think that in America you have like some really strong figures. Like you have like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Like basically, like if you come in Italy and like you say her name, you can feel it. Like people really like her, and we're in Italy, so it has nothing to do. Like it's not something that touches us. But like if you say her name, you see people actually like say, if I was like in the USA, I would vote for her. Like I think that you have some really strong female figures that other countries do not have. So even if you are really divided country, like I think most of countries are actually in this historical period, I think that still you have some really strong female characters that, if supported well, I think that they could actually even rule, and they could have really important roles, I think. I don't know what you think about it, but I think.
I mean, we're pretty much behind every major country in having a female leader, even Pakistan and Argentina, in places that are, known for being machismo or whatever, have had female leaders before the United States. So I think that bums people out. But certainly there is, as you say, like a bench of women coming up who are just stars and who inspire a lot of people, and who I think with AOC, bring in a whole new generation. That's what's exciting about her and Kamala, is that it's a new generation. I think in some ways, when by the time Hillary ran in 2016, people had already made up their minds about her, that it was hard to change them. She'd been around for so long. And sometimes that was good. People saw her as a leader who like had the experience. But I also think you see candidates or politicians who are like more savvy about social media, more kind of putting themselves out there, and that is resonating. Like I just love
That's
that
interesting.
image of I love that image of Kamala in her workout clothes when she called Biden and she was like, "Joe, we did it," and she
Yeah,
just like, because like you're so used to women having to be like in a suit and your hair is perfect, and it's like that was like a good moment to me, because I really didn't see Hillary like that until after she lost. She was always like perfect, and I feel for her because she felt like she had to be. But it's a new generation.
no, it's nice. Like for example, even Alex, you said like AOC like has done so many remarks and like how a woman should like place herself and how she should go out, and the fact that like it doesn't matter. I think it's really nice messages that you're throwing out. So despite the situation, I mean, I still think that you have some figures that are really inspirational. So I mean, I wouldn't be so negative about it, because if you see like the international situation, you understand that. I mean, still you have some really positive characters there. So the last
Yeah,
question, it's not,
sure.
it's on the pandemic, and I know it's really difficult talking about this because obviously like it's ruining everyone's lives actually, but still it's something to talk about it. And,
Yeah.
I've read so many, like we've read so many articles about the fact that the Obama administration had already placed um, a pandemic, not really a pandemic plan, but still they had some documents. It was a huge document with like all the indications that they would have needed to follow in the case that this unfortunate event happened. But the Trump administration did not care about this and ignored it. And what do you think that was the biggest? I know it's difficult to judge because we cannot judge, but what do you think is something that really they could have done different and that they had the possibility to do different? And how do you think that Biden is going to deal with the situation now that we have the vaccines and now that maybe we can do better?
Yeah, well, I write TV shows. I'm writing this Netflix show and I'm writing an HBO show. So I am not covering the pandemic and I can't speak to the response of the administration. It's just not, I mean, it's not something I've ever covered or written about. I mean, I think Biden has appointed Ron Klain as his chief of staff, and Ron Klain was in the Obama administration, helped with the Ebola response, the very prompt Ebola response. So I feel like he will bring that experience into the Biden White House in a way that I don't know if the Trump administration has had like an equivalent who's had that experience of dealing with a very threatening potential pandemic. But yes, unfortunately, I cannot speak to that because I am a fiction writer now.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I actually wanted, I just wanted like your opinion as a private citizen, like not, as a journalist. I just wanted like your take on this because you still are a citizen. You still live in America. You still, do the things that others do. So it was just like to get an
Yeah.
overview for someone who is, an outsider and like cannot
Yeah.
understand the situation there. But I mean, it's fine if you cannot answer that. So I'm actually really done basically, but just one question, like when you were writing this book, what like when you finished writing it, did you think that Trump was going to have two mandates, or you already knew that he was going to finish with like 4 years? Because I'm reading the Obama's memoir, and he written that he knew that he was not going to do more than more than one.
Oh, Trump? Um, I don't think I knew when I was writing the book whether he would, even finish his complete first term. I mean, he was impeached, I mean, there was a Mueller investigation, and he was impeached. So, I mean, I don't even know if we knew that he was going to finish his full term. And then I think as the election got closer and the Democrats were scrambling, I think it was a real reality that he could have won a second term. I think that became pretty clear during the campaign. But certainly, I wouldn't profess to know in 2016 what was going to happen. A lot of people thought he was going to be like removed from office. So when he was impeached.